It's on you. Thank you. I've never been introduced as a special guest, so thanks very much. That's the first for me. Yeah, so I suppose today we're going to talk about DevOps, and I suppose anything, when we talk about testing any of these as well, is we recently done a kind of a session locally in Galway. So we have an office in Galway, and we've done a session like this with the local community of IT professionals, and we found it very interesting and very interactive. I suppose I don't know what the trend is in Poland at the moment. Have people been involved in DevOps? I'm going to get people interacting very quickly here. So how many people have been involved in DevOps or are looking at DevOps at the moment? So we have a few hands. Good. Are people looking at it like for the future? Don't be shy. Good, good, good. So this will be interesting for a lot of you. Like, everyone wants to go faster. Everyone wants to have better quality software. We want to avoid disaster. It's like anything. So in this day and age, a lot of people and a lot of companies now are producing software, developing software, testing software very, very quickly and very, very efficiently. What happens then is the quality of the software and the end application becomes a factor. So DevOps, 2-3 years ago, it became a kind of a key word. Nothing's ever done about it. Agile is still there, but more and more this year now, especially since the beginning of the year, a lot more people, a lot more companies are talking about DevOps. So today's session, what we're going to talk about is the world of DevOps. For those of you that haven't been introduced to it, we'll certainly introduce you today. We'll talk about the 6 steps in DevOps. Now, some people might see there's more, but in my eyes, there's 6 steps. Making the cultural transition to DevOps. So it's not just a technical aspect that we need to consider in terms of DevOps, and I'll talk a little bit about more as we get into it, but it's more on the management, getting buy-in from your colleagues, from your company as well, and again, how to deploy quality software as well. And also, as I said, I'll talk a little bit about the finding and interesting takeaways that we got from our session locally in my local town in Galway, in Ireland. Has anybody been to Galway before? Oh, we have a few. Okay, good. So, when you hear mention of DevOps, and for those of you that have gone through or are going through a transition of DevOps, when you bring that up to management or when you bring it into your company's culture, the automatic reaction is, oh my God, how am I going to deal with this? I've just gone through a transition now going from waterfall to agile. How am I now going to go to DevOps? So that's always the key thing is, people freak out, people start running for the hills, start screaming and shouting, pulling their hair out. It's not all bad, again, in terms of DevOps. It's a way of improving the software, and especially in this, as I said, this day and age where we have a lot of quick turnaround and everything. So people will be familiar with this kind of DevOps cycle. DevOps, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but it's a holistic approach to kind of collaboration between development, test, and all the different areas. So it's optimizing the people, the process, and the tools, and combine them all together to make sure that you have better quality software. The dev team, so they're the business, they're the guys that design, work with your product managers, your product owners to make sure the application functions as expected. And everyone here has been in IT for a while now, so they'll know what dev guys do. Same with the ops team. So again, if you're familiar with an agile methodology, for me, I think the ops guys add to the DevOps side of things where more and more now, you've got your release engineers, you've got your load testing, performance testing guys, your system engineers, your security guys, your network guys. So there's a lot more people, a lot more stakeholders involved in a DevOps cycle nowadays when it comes into that. And you need to take into consideration what they're doing and what they need to get from this process in order for it to be effective. So DevOps enables teams to push value continuously. So again, when we talked about waterfall, you got your kind of siloed process of design, build, test, implement. And if you go into then your kind of agile, again, it's sprint cycles, it's releases, it's versions, you're improving that all the time. And then we introduce kind of DevOps where we've got a more structured, a more siloed approach where you've got more and more teams involved, you've got more and more stakeholders involved, you've got more and more process involved. you know, I think there is a fine line for me personally between DevOps and Agile. I think, you know, a lot of people will stick with Agile for a long, long time to come. I think DevOps is still in its infancy, although it's been talked about for a number of years. But I think, you know, as I said, I'm seeing this more and more now and talking to more and more customers about DevOps and how that incorporates into their systems. So, benefits of DevOps. Can anybody name any benefits of DevOps?
Robustness.
Yes.
Faster time to market.
There we go. I'm like, this is a good audience. Got a few interactions. Some people just sit there and say, but yeah. Software delivery and minimum risk and disruption. So, you know, the whole thing here is to make sure that when you incorporate DevOps, that you're not going to, you know, disrupt the current process. You know, there's going to be minimum risk. And I'll talk a little bit again when we get into the presentation where there is minimum risk, or where to avoid minimum risk, and also work with the process that you have already. Build cross-team collaboration. I don't know what roles people have in this room. You know, are you developers? Are you testers? Are you project managers? But, you know, you look at, like, you know, back end and front end, UI, API testing. People nowadays don't collaborate as much as they should do. And I think DevOps brings that culture together. And I think it's important to kind of make sure that you build that collaboration in the culture to make sure DevOps is going to be successful. And then faster time, faster releases, for value creation. I think faster time to market is another one there as well. All right. So making a cultural transition into DevOps from Agile, from Waterfall. So I got my little line here now, and we always start off with our sad face. Maybe it's a Monday morning, maybe it's a Friday evening. I'm trying to get a release out there and it's not working for me. You know, I've gone through Jenkins and all of a sudden I'm getting error messages on a Friday evening at 4 o'clock. I want to go to the pub. I have to wait for this to finish. And if we want to try and involve DevOps, we need to kind of, you know, understand what it actually does. You know, do the homework. Make sure that, you know, the areas where you're lacking, where you're seeing issues, that you kind of improve on those as well. You know, measuring the current performance, the efficiency of your process. There's always going to be processes where you're going to have inefficiencies and where you're going to have problems. I think I talk to customers day in, day out, and, you know, they come and ask us, like, you know, some advice, and what is driving you to come and talk? There's always going to be an issue, there's always going to be a problem there. And, you know, talking about tools, talking about processes and all that kind of stuff, but there's always going to be issues there. Bridging the gap. So, you know, explaining, you know, the benefits of DevOps. So acknowledging that there are issues, and acknowledging that you need to make sure that there are gaps between your dev and your testers. Traditionally, there's always been that kind of gap between your developers and your testers. I think more and more now, and I've talked to a good few companies that have implemented DevOps, and the collaboration and the teamwork between devs and testers now has become, you know, very kind of, there's a thin line between them. A lot more, I don't know if people have heard of shift left trend, where a lot more developers are getting involved in the testing side of things as well. So this is bringing all this kind of bridging the gap between the processes, but also between the cultures, between the developers and the testers, or the project managers as well. Sharing is caring. The first time I heard that saying was my wife's niece, and she had a bag of sweets, and we asked her for a sweet, and she says, I don't like the sharing and caring. And I think that always stuck with me, you know, in respect to kind of making sure that we can share information, share knowledge. I think a lot of people tend to, you know, when they're in a position, you know, that they think they're unstoppable, or that, you know, they can't be moved. You know, it's good for them as well, but also for the company to make sure they can share the knowledge across the company. So again, it's also sharing the pain points, and I certainly found out some very interesting you know, information when we done our session a few months ago with DevOps and with people in the at home in Ireland, that a lot of people have different pain points when they're implementing DevOps, and it's always going to be a case when you're implementing process as well. Start small. I think that's the key with DevOps. And that's the key even with any process is to start small, build small blocks, build small teams, work in smaller, people are working on Scrum teams at the moment, are looking to work with Scrum teams. So have one of your Scrum teams work in the DevOps environment, measure the performance, measure the impact, measure how things are going with that. The worst thing you can do is go in guns blazing into your management and say, I want the whole team implementing DevOps. That's not going to happen, never. So it's important to kind of start small, going from you're doing your homework, know who will be your key stakeholders, know who will be able to adopt this quickly. So it's important to have that. Retrospect. So that's another thing. I keep going back between two screens and my neck's getting sore here. I should stick with one. But study the challenges, the benefits. DevOps is, if you're firstly introducing this, it's an experimental. Work with smaller teams. As it says, you want to make this a success. So have a team that is willing to work with you, willing to see the benefits of DevOps as well. And expand. So once you have that kind of small defined set of teams, expand that out then as well to maybe other departments, maybe other lines of business, maybe other parts of the organization globally. So making sure you're getting buy-in. So it's putting together the jigsaw of this to make sure that when you go to upper management to say, here's the benefits, here's the measurements, here's the performance, here's the improvements, that management can't really argue with you, that you've got it all there for you in front of you. And once you have that, then everyone's happy. Well, that's in theory. I don't know about you guys how DevOps has gone, in terms of implementing or how you've done that, but is that something you guys have done before, for those that have looked at DevOps? No. Had you success? Some success. Okay. Right, so common pitfalls to avoid when moving to DevOps. So we have benefits, and with benefits there's going to be pitfalls, pros and cons. Faster release, but neglecting the end user, so the user value. I think as well, it's 2018, and there's a lot more focus on the user experience, and as more and more releases, more and more versions of your software comes out, there's faster releases, and we are neglecting our end users. And our end user are the people who are actually going to buy and also going to use our software. So if we're neglecting those and having poor quality software, obviously your software isn't going to be successful. So that's another thing is making sure that you take into consideration the end user. Lack of optimum tool chain. So again, with kind of DevOps, and I'll show you kind of a map of tools that you could get lost in terms of DevOps, and there are a lot of tools out there that will you will get lost in. So just to be aware of kind of tools that will work for you, that will fit into your organization as well. Different thoughts, different feelings around the stakeholders. There's always going to be 2 or 3 people that are going to be pessimists. I don't know whether I'm a pessimist or an optimist, depends on what I've been asked, but the whole thing here is that there's always going to be someone that's going to give you the negative impact of that. So it's important to kind of take into consideration those people. That's the important thing. This when you go and build your teams, smaller teams, is to have those people that are going to be your champions, the people that are going to want to implement DevOps. If you haven't got those people in your smaller teams in the very beginning, then the success of DevOps is going to be very, very slim. All right. How to deploy quality software faster with DevOps. So best practices around moving faster to or with DevOps. So we talked about collaboration in the very beginning. It is important. If you look at the different software development lifecycle, from development, test, performance, everyone's got a different agenda of what they need to achieve, what they need to have in their processes. So it's important to have that collaboration, but not just from a kind of a technical point of view, but also from a business point of view. And it's important to have that collaboration with your stakeholders. As I said, stakeholders will have the perception that they don't want to change. Some of the old legacy systems banking. I know there's a lot of people in here in the banking sector that have old legacy and the old processes, so it's very hard for upper management to move away from that. But I think at some stage you're going to have to do that. If you don't, then your software is going to be left behind. You're going to lose end users with that, and certainly DevOps will help you with that kind of process. But thing here, and I think from talking to different people, the key point is with DevOps is collaboration. If there's no collaboration, it's always going to be hard. It's going to be an uphill struggle. Automation. Most of us have looked at automation in the past. How many people haven't looked at automation? A few people. Okay, so automation will help in terms of improving the process faster, quicker, all that kind of stuff. And again, as I said, it's ensuring the quality while moving faster. And the more you can automate in terms of going from a build to a release to then testing, then deploying, it certainly helps you. And again, lets you go off on a Friday then for your beers or whatever, go off with your family. So it's important to kind of have that automation framework in there, be it Jenkins, be it TFS, be it Puppet, whatever kind of automation tool you're working on. The whole thing here is to make sure that you're reducing your testing times, reducing your build process, reducing your whole end-to-end cycle. And then the feedback and monitoring. So feedback is always going to be key in DevOps. So when you release a version of the application, whether it be your testers, whether it be your end users, once you do the release, you've got your monitoring. So different tools out there that help you kind of understand, are people clicking on the right screens, are people using the application correctly? So, indirectly when you're accessing a system, maybe it's slow, we get there, or the DevOps team or the operations team certainly get that feedback. So it's important to kind of have that and use that, bring it back to your different teams, make sure it's working correctly. I don't know how many people do that nowadays because it's so segregated in terms of your developers, your testers and your performance team, that the information being shared across those teams is very limited. Their set goal is to set that out and just monitor, for example, with the performance team, monitor the application to make sure that it's responsive enough. But how that's fed back into your developers to maybe change a line of code that could help improve the performance 10% is always important. So that feedback is important as well to ensure, especially in a quick turnaround, a quick cycle, a quick sprint release as well. Virtualizing. So I suppose when we talk today in today's world, a lot of things are virtualized, from VMs, Docker, all that kind of stuff. Even APIs are virtualized. The more control you have over systems, I don't know of many companies now that have physical machines. A lot of people will have virtual machines, will have virtual environments, will have virtual systems as well. And it's easier to maintain, easier to manage as well. But the important thing here is that across those virtual systems, that again, the collaboration between those systems, it might be your servers, it might be your APIs, it might be your applications that might be causing the problem. But it's just important to kind of make sure that with virtualization that you can control that very easily. So this is the DevOps tools, and a lot of you might be familiar with it. Again, there's a lot of things going on there. The reason I just showed that was because it's just to kind of show the kind of different tools that are available, especially with automation. It's important to kind of see where these tools will help you with the automation. If we get buy-in from our management team and in terms of DevOps, then get that information out there is important. I'm going to be a bit biased here and use SmartBear as a kind of a platform. So DevOps at a glance. So if you look at kind of a system where we're developing code, APIs, documenting code, document APIs, how we then release that via Docker, via GitHub, whatever, how you control that. But it's important to kind of bring that into your pipeline. Now I chose Jenkins because, for obvious reasons, it's probably one of the most commonly used CI tool out there on the market. Others are available, TFS, Bamboo, whatever. But again, it's just to kind of ensure that we got a flow there. From your back-end APIs to your front-end UI testing, all the way across to your performance and monitoring. So, it's important to kind of understand the whole cycle of that and how DevOps from a tools perspective might help you get through your system as well. So findings and interests. My card isn't going up yet, is it? No, that's right. My findings and interests and takeaways. So as I said in the beginning, we did a session. So the engineering team in Galway did a session with some of the local IT people in Galway around this whole DevOps and the 6 steps. And what we done was we did a very brief intro. We took 6 stages, deploy, release, tests, monitoring, all that kind of stuff. And we did an interactive session, so anybody could go to the different stations. We were called station masters, and what there was, it was more interaction. It was more kind of understanding what people are looking at in terms of DevOps, what people are doing in terms of how to get the system, how to get DevOps into their environment. And again, as I said, we looked at plan, build, test, release, deploy, and monitor, and they were the 6 stations we had. And some very interesting facts that we found, and I think I have a picture there of, so there's a few of the guys that actually attended. And again, some of the findings from that were around, what we've done is we set up into blocks, the benefits, the challenges, tools and the processes, and for each of those stations. And I suppose some of the key things I think mentioned was return on investments, or time to market as well was another one. But I suppose the other thing was around, from a benefits point of view, and I talked about them already, was to be quicker. Now, obviously, you can debate whether Agile also does that. But again, when you're talking about DevOps, we're looking to do it very, very quickly. Again, when we talked about kind of going from that process from a sad phase to a happy phase, is to measure the impact of return on investment, performance, etc. Also, less resource intensive. You'd be amazed about, people that have implemented DevOps, how quickly they forgot what the actual script's done, what the tool's done. So, that was one of the kind of interesting conversations we had, was that when they developed DevOps and they implemented automation, that it was less resource intensive, but when something happened, they didn't know where the issue was. So they had to go back through all their notes again. So there was that kind of, and that was actually one of the challenges as well, that there was lack of knowledge, that the knowledge was kind of being taken away from them. So if they had developed or implemented DevOps for a number of years, for a year, that the knowledge they had within the application or within the process got lost. So that was a kind of a negative impact for them. But again, the positive thing was that it was less resource intensive. The challenges, obviously buy-in, management, especially kind of the older kind of generation and the older kind of legacy systems and environments, like especially finance. The buy-in is very, very hard. We come across it every day. Also communication. There's always that kind of lack of communication, making sure that people can work together. Infrastructure. So being able to access different virtual systems, different hardware, different software, different networks as well, was always a challenge. And time and money. So it's always been the impact of looking at DevOps, but again, doing that as well as doing your day-to-day job. So it's always that kind of process. If you look at tools, you're not looking at tools in your day-to-day activities. It's when I've got time. It's when in the evening. It's at lunchtime. It's always as ad hoc as possible. So it's all these are challenges that are important. Tools as well. So tools around Jenkins, Circle CI was one that's come up quite a lot. Do many people use Circle CI? Have you heard of Circle CI? Okay, watch this space. I think it's going to be a big one as well. I think in terms of Jenkins as well, Circle CI will be one of those kind of tools that will help with CI/CD. Jira, a lot of people everyone's nodding their heads. Yeah, I think 99.99% of people are using Jira now at this stage. Maven, SoapUI. Well, big shout out. There we go. Come by the booth, we have SoapUI there. But yeah, look, there's a lot. They're just a few tools. Like obviously, there's a million one tools, and everyone's got different tools that they either have in their environment or they either are looking at already. So it's important to have that as well. Processes, automating tests. I know some of you said that you haven't looked at automation before, so it's a killer when you're doing manual testing and when you've got to input 50 users to log on to a system. It's just madness in this day and age. Types of communication, so the likes of Slack, the likes of Google, all those kind of systems will help you. How many people are using Slack here? Oh, a lot of people. Yeah, so it seems to be a very interesting medium for communication. Obviously, email is going to be one of those as well. Also, when you look at kind of the DevOps at a glance, how we communicate code changes, like Git, how we work with that as well. So it's important to have that. Managing data is always going to be hard. So how I manage that data, how I manage the processes, how secure the data is going to be, and removing dependency. So there's always going to be dependency on, that the tester cannot test the application until the developer releases the code base. So they're all the kind of processes, and as I said, it was a very interesting kind of 40 minutes, 45 minutes that we had with the IT or the kind of IT community in Galway. As I said, it was very interactive and very eye-opening in terms of DevOps. As I said, I don't work with DevOps people day in, day out, but I certainly do work with them quite a lot. But again, to listen to the guys that have been implementing that and have implemented it successfully, it was a very good session there as well. So, how many people have drank Guinness? Wow. I was going to go with vodka, but I didn't know what sort of vodka you guys drank, so I thought I'd go with Guinness. And I'm not actually a Guinness drinker myself. So the reason I put up Guinness there is probably an icon in Ireland in terms of alcohol, and it's across the world. But if you look at kind of DevOps in this kind of respect, and I know I'm being very kind of I suppose the Irish are known for the drinking, but that's the reason I put it out there. But I suppose if you look at kind of it's gone a wrong way. Here we go. So before Arthur Guinness is the guy that actually created Guinness. Before Arthur was had a lot of money, he used to go down to the cellar there, and he had a very kind of old archaic way of brewing Guinness. And if we look at where we're at nowadays, we're still not evolving fast enough along with our software. We're still doing this archaic way of developing, designing, testing our software. So poor Arthur before was pedaling away. He was kind of trying to make so many barrels of Guinness every day using this old-fashioned way. And now all of a sudden, fast forward to 2018, they got the most sophisticated brewing kind of shop in the world. And it's taken years, and it's taken pain, sweat, blood, whatever you want to call it. But to have that automation process in place is important. And I think once you kind of see the benefits of DevOps, you're certainly going to get a better quality software. And that's what it's about. It's going back to the roots, making sure that your users use your software efficiently and effectively and want to use it more and more. Like everyone wants to drink Guinness. A lot of people put their hands up there. They're not forced to drink it, but they want to drink it. Same with your application. The faster you churn out your releases, there's always going to be something that's going to break. There's always going to be a risk of the quality dropping. You look at kind of Guinness, there is a kind of steady consistency around the taste of that. Now that said, if you come to Ireland, it's probably a bit better a taste, but I'm being biased there. But there's always going to be an improvement in the quality depending on the process that you do there as well. So, as it says, and everyone likes to do quality control, so everyone likes to do testing, so why not test against as well? So, as it says, if you want to get more information on what I talked about in terms of the previous session that we've done in Galway, we do have a blog out there, and it talks about the findings across the different releases, the different stages of the DevOps, and it certainly is an interesting blog. So I'm just going to self-promote that there as well. All right. So thank you very much for your attention today. I know hopefully you got one or two things from this session. I always think if someone learned one thing, then it's a successful session. All right? Any questions?